Hey everybody, John the Other here, John Hembling, obviously. And I recently uploaded a video talking about a judge's finding in a case of false accusation and how listening to an hour-long reading of a not guilty verdict went in the courtroom. This was a case which, based on the evidence, it was clear the accusations were made falsely against an innocent person and the findings of the judge of not guilty were correct. But a lot of people in the comments thread asked, what's going to happen to the accuser who lied to the police and the prosecutor and lied to the court? Will the false accuser be prosecuted and, as some have suggested, maybe jailed for using the police and the court as a weapon against an innocent person? I don't think I need to tell you there will probably be no consequence for the false accuser. And I understand that this is a source of considerable frustration to a lot of people, particularly those who have themselves or have had a family member affected by a false accusation. There is a sense by a lot of people that false accusers are using the police and the courts out of malice rather than out of honest misunderstanding or maybe regretted compulsion. And for those who have been personally affected by false accusations or who have become aware how quickly innocent people's lives can be destroyed, it's easy to forget how complex human motivations can be. So complicated that humans are very bad at even understanding their own motives. But while the problem of false accusations is real, if we're going to deal with it effectively, our solution will have to look at what leads people to make false and destructive accusations that they later come to believe are truthful. So it's worth looking at how that happens. A breakup of a sexual relationship does not usually happen when everything is going well. So people are out of sorts usually when they make their exit from a relationship, and usually they're not completely blameless for when the relationship goes wrong. That is not to suggest there's an innocent person and a guilty person in a breakup. There's mostly plenty of mistakes made by both sides. But when this happens, it's so easy to tell the smallest of all possible lies to put blame on the other person and make yourself look good as you go out the door. A tiny lie, a tiny grievance, a minor dissatisfaction that you can lay at your ex's feet. And when you do that, sometimes something really funny happens. A victim advocate or a shelter worker or a social worker might whisper in your ear that this wasn't just incompatible goals in your relationship. No, it was abuse and you were not just a victim of it, you're heroic for breaking free. And who doesn't like being a little heroic? How about a nice little rush of dopamine every time you agree with the extremely compassionate victim advocate telling you your grievance was much greater than it was, and that you are much more noble and heroic for having survived it. Soon enough, an outrageous story of violent assault becomes real to you, and the trauma you carry because of that assault becomes real as well, and like magic, you've become a victim. So when we try to solve this problem of false accusation, our solution is going to have to work without further harming actual victims, whether they are created or whether they suffered objective external harm in the real world. Because from the point of view of created victims, there's no distinction to be made. They're carrying damage that is as painful to them as the damage of somebody who was actually assaulted. And as a side note, the extremely compassionate support workers who might amplify somebody's grievance into a criminal offense to be prosecuted, when this happens, these support workers are doing the exact damage to their clients that is then being laid at the doorstep of an ex-partner who just thought it was an uncomfortable breakup. But what would happen if victims who we recognize as not real begin to be prosecuted for either public mischief or perjury? The accusations can be factually false at the same time that the accusers believe they have been truly victimized. And if false accusers like this are prosecuted, it would almost certainly be used as the basis for a newly energized outrage movement, which would produce new laws that conform to the biases of some victim advocates. More innocent people would be chewed up in this abuse of the courts. Obviously, it's also possible this is going to happen anyway, just slower. But when we look at false accusers from the perspective of defense of the falsely accused, it's very easy to see them as criminals who should be punished or jailed. This is particularly so when we see innocent people brutalized by the court based only on the say-so of people who later it turns out to have not told the truth. But the lies don't just happen in a vacuum. False accusations find their way into the courtrooms with the cooperation of the police, the prosecutors, and support workers who pursue the guilt of the accused with a singular focus and determination. And in some cases, this enthusiasm might be appropriate because some accusations are truthful But in other cases, support workers and activists will take somebody with a relatively small grievance and cultivate in them a story of much more serious abuse. An argumentative breakup can be transformed into escape from a violently abusive relationship. An awkward sexual encounter can be magnified into criminal assault. And because when a person is told they are ever more heroic at each step that they buy a little more into this narrative, the victim will soon believe it is all true. That horrendous abuse contained within the story becomes real, and the victim takes on real damage and real trauma of an event that was inflated by the support of honestly well-meaning volunteers. And this can happen even where a victim began with no more hardship than a relationship's bumpy ending. And activists working this psychological magic might not even be doing it on purpose. Facts won't get in your way if you're truly compassionate and you're an advocate for whom the words victim and woman already mean the same thing. And it's because of this problem that prosecuting somebody we recognize as a false accuser won't fix the false accusation problem. It will probably make it worse. But there are professionals in the courts whose role, if it's performed properly, should not permit an emotional circus to sweep away innocent lives and families. This is something that Diana Davison and I have both witnessed in the conduct of the prosecutor in the recent case that we talked about this week. When it is a team of victim shelter workers who provide the professional coaching and the in-court support to the prosecutor, including shaping the prosecution strategy, and that becomes the dynamic driving an aggressive prosecution of an innocent person, well, then the court has some real problems that need to be solved. And if we can begin to shine a light on this, then it's possible we might begin to fix the escalating problem of false accusations instead of only fighting them one at a time, which is what we're doing now. Now, before I wrap this up, I just want to say thank you very sincerely to everybody who's helped support the Lighthouse Project, which is a nonprofit protecting the rights of the falsely accused. There's a link to that in the low bar. As always, thanks for listening, and have a lovely, lovely day.